All right, welcome back to another episode of the Untamed Life. It's Christine Jewell, and today I am joined by my lover, my husband, Mark. Every once in a while, I like to bring him in on the conversation. He always has so much to offer. Plus, his voice is just fun to listen to. But here we are, and we are actually recording this from a treehouse. We are in Mexico right now. We're in Tulum. We're staying at a beautiful resort called Nomade. Nomade. I think I'm saying that right. And there's literally these tree houses up in the trees. And it's so cool. And we're perfectly cocooned in this room amongst all of this lush greenery. So much life here, so much abundance, so much of a reflection of just the prosperous nature of creation, honestly, being by the ocean and everything. And this is a conversation that Mark and I have been having more and more recently in our life, in our marriage, as we just really continue to lean into like more of what God has in store for us and becoming more servants and channels to really like share that beauty and share that, that life, that beautiful, prosperous life with others. And we actually had some, I don't want to say struggles, but maybe like we were kind of like, wow, do we really deserve all this beauty? And we've had this conversation lately. And how do we lean into the place of receptiveness, not only to receive the goodness that God has for us in our relationship, in our families, in our hearts, financial prosperity, but really to be at ease with it, to enjoy it, and then to be able to pour it back into the world. I talk a lot about being a multiplier. Well, we can't multiply what we don't acknowledge. So thanks for being here and being in this conversation.
It's so good. It's so good. Thank you for letting me join in.
I love it. So let's just start a little bit. We're going to riff a little. This is a totally organic conversation. We don't have like an outline or 5 points that we're going to teach you or anything. But I just want to share some things that have been really coming through for me. And then I want to ask you kind of like your input on it. But I know that for myself, one of the things that, I've done a lot of work around, and we've done a lot of work in our relationship as well, but really like being okay with enjoying what we have, and instead of always be stretching for the next thing or feeling guilty about what we have and somehow having to prove that we earned it or prove that we're worthy of it or prove, right? Like there's like this weird space sometimes that we enter into when we're like either it could be like on a vacation with our family, or we receive like a beautiful experience. And I know I've experienced this. I've worked with clients who've experienced this, where like they're going and they are in this most beautiful setting and we just can't fully relax. We can't fully relax into it because our mind is elsewhere, our body's elsewhere. And it has really been a journey of training myself to be here and enjoy what God has given us, the experiences, and know that if we're not able to fully enjoy it, then we can't bring other people into it, right? But there's been so much resistance around that in the past. So I'm excited about being able to relax more and more into what, we've been entrusted with, and really see it as a gift that the more we relax into it, the more we can bring other people into this space.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what lands for you on this piece.
Man, it's also been a journey for me. I know, obviously for both of us, I think for me, it goes back to, the program that I inherited growing up, right? Where everything was hard, right? Everything, like in order to have something amazing, you have to first do something hard to deserve it, right? You have to first do something challenging or difficult in order to feel like whatever it is that you've been given or whatever that you earned, air quotes, right, was okay, and so much of my journey lately, prior to coming down here to Mexico a few days ago, I'd been feeling like really, really heavy. Feeling really heavy, in like even like the gorgeous new house that we have, which is more than anything that I would have ever dreamed of having, you know, when I was younger.
Yeah.
When I was a kid growing up in a log house in Minnesota. And, you know, really...
Bartering for food.
Yeah, bartering for food, hunting our food, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all those things, like that was the upbringing. And so, you know, the program has always got to be like, you've got to give like a massive amount in order to receive even like a little bit. And lately we've been flipping that model on its head.
Yeah, the equation.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, so I think one of my big learnings lately is that there's so much abundance and there's so much beauty, there's so much good out here in the world, and God is so good that he really just wants us to enjoy it. He really wants us to relax into it, really wants us to, like, desires for us, like craves for us to be at ease.
Delighted.
And yeah, you know, and had an experience the other night where we were working with the ayahuasca, and there was so much music, so much beauty, so much joy, so much love that I was literally like swimming in it. And I was almost like I ran out of places to put it because there was so much, and it was so easy to get there, you know. Wow, I mean, it was such a lesson. And one of my intentions in coming down here to do this work was to really be to get into the feeling of experiencing abundance, to program that in, to imprint that feeling into my body, into my spirit, into everything, so that it becomes like the norm, you know, to be in that feeling, to be in that space. Whew. And you know, and I realize I've been resisting feeling this good.
Yeah, like somehow we feel good feeling bad sometimes. We can be addicted to feeling bad.
It's an addiction to feeling like guilty or, you know, ashamed or, you know, whatever. You know, it's like even when somebody just does something, you know, simple, like they hold the door for you or give you a gift, right? And you're like, oh, you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
You know, oh, you didn't have to do that. And you're right, they don't have to do that. They don't. But they did. And that's okay. Just receive it.
Yeah, and I think like it sounds kind of hairy-fairy sometimes, and we're like, oh, just receive, just love. But it is really like when I'm able to acknowledge, you know, and really be in the moment. And I love the word saturate right now, like saturate all of my senses and say, God, I see this beauty. I see this person's heart that's sitting in front of me. I see their soul. I see, you know, the food on the table. And I'm so grateful for, like, really, we live in such an abundant place. Like the Western world, if you're in the Western world, like it's so rich. No matter how much you have, you're rich. Like, and we are rich no matter where we're living. We have access to this. But, you know, to be able to see that and like the more you receive, what I mean by saying when we receive, like I was running this women's retreat last week and they kept asking me like, how do I receive? How do I receive? And I was like, really? It's actually very simple. You say thank you. You literally say thank you without having to explain why you're grateful or you know, to give back right away. Again, going back to that gift analogy, it's like, oh, thank you, and then like you kind of brush the thank you aside, and then you're like rushing to give them back a compliment, or you're you know, going into like, oh, what did I do enough to deserve it? But you really like deeply appreciate and say thank you so much for all of the thought, you know, all of the energy, all of the, like, for bringing all of this to me. And again, this is like something so simple when we're sitting down and saying grace over our meal, or like your husband or your wife does something for you, or you know, I'm thinking even like when new clients join and a new, you know, a person says yes to work with me. And in the past, the programmer was like, oh, this is a sale, so you got to get into like what you're going to deliver. And like, instead of like, wow, God, thank you so much for entrusting me with this person, entrusting me with this journey, thanking them for trusting me with the journey. And what's interesting is when we start really moving into the thank you, and we really are thankful, full of thanks, the receiving, the receivership, it's a spirit of receivership that opens up. And like that, naturally, you become so full of gratitude, and you're like full that you like, it's just a natural law of like how things work. In order, it's like you naturally then want to give from that full place. And it's not necessarily tit for tat or this for that. It's not like that one person. But the giving, then you move into another area, and it doesn't matter. You could be walking down the road, or you're like, you know, you're inspired to give something back. And it's really like this beautiful circle of like harmonious. As I receive, as I truly say thank you, then naturally I'm inspired or ignited, or my heart's awakened to give back to someone else. And we move out of this whole space of like, oh, do I deserve it? Am I worthy? Like that alone is such garbage. It's like, no, you don't deserve it. It's a gift, right? I gave it to you because I love you and I want you to enjoy it. Like we talk about this a lot. I did a previous podcast on this, you know, a couple part series on giving and receiving. You can go back to, link that in the show notes. But it's like, we don't deserve it. And we do deserve it. Like it's yes and. And so like, if we can just put that whole garbage aside and that whole language, I think, and just say thank you, then
it becomes a practice.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes a practice where, you know, so often we are like we're receiving something, whether it's a payment, you know, from your clients or your employer. We're receiving maybe a compliment, or you're getting whatever in your mind, like you're already working 5 minutes in the future or a day in the future, and so you don't really pause to just really soak in,
take it all in,
to soak in that that moment, and that becomes the practice right there. Can you pause, like when our maestro Holshui gave me, and his wife gave me a gift the other night, a necklace, and you know, it was in that moment that I wasn't trying to move forward. I wasn't thinking, oh, I got to go do this next thing. Like in that moment, I just stopped with this thing and with them, and I gave them a hug, and I was just so deeply appreciative of this thing. Like they didn't have to give this to me. It wasn't.
And I watched him when he was actually selecting it for you.
You did?
Yeah. And so what was cool is I saw him sort of scan and like select what he was going to give you and pick it up and hold it. And it was really cool. Yeah. So it's like just as thoughtful as you are in the receiving, there's so much thought that goes into the selecting of the gift and the giving it to you.
And I really embodied in that moment. Like I just want to pause and really be here now in this space and receive this thing, and I love it. I do love it, you know.
Yeah.
And
you're like a little kid. I love it. Thank you.
I am, you know, and like so, like I see it with my kids, you know, like when they get something that they're really appreciative of, like just really in that space, like this is so cool, this is so nice, you know, whatever. And like when we become adults, it's like we kind of lose that for some reason. Like we move on beyond.
Well, I think what you said is so cool. Like I want to, you know, you said like, oh, I received the gift, and automatically you're like, oh, what do I have to do with this, or how do I use it, or whatever, right? So it just reminds me of, you know, I love that, because that moving forward, it's that not taking that pause right away makes us think like, I need to figure out how to use this, you know, again, like you're opening a gift, and right away you need to figure out the remote control and read all the instructions, instead of just holding it and like being excited about it. And you know, it makes me think of like, God has given us all gifts. You know, each one of us is designed so uniquely, and we have gifts like literally inside of us, you know, and a lot of times we don't even acknowledge our gift, or we think like, oh, this can't be it. It must be something bigger. It must be something with a greater purpose. And Mark and I talked about this, like, you know, my gift is my energy and like the life force I bring, and your gift is your presence. That's so like grounding, and that father energy that like when people are just around you, automatically it's healing. And when people are around me, they automatically, their energy shifts and they feel more alive. And with you, like they feel safe. And it's so funny because we think we always need to add on. Like it's like, oh, I know this is the gift, but like I need extra. I need to add on to it. And that's actually when we start kind of messing it up instead of going back to the purity of it. So it makes me think of like the God-given gifts inside of us. Like, do you know what they are? have you unlocked them? And like, just you unlock them again by recognizing them, by receiving. And how you are able to bring more of them into the world is just simply by being in the gift more, and like just letting yourself express it, right? Expressing the joy. And it's so cool because even what you said yesterday, I was laying on the end of the dock. There was this beautiful like dock with a swing over this lagoon. I mean, if there's like heaven on earth, this was definitely a slice of it. I'm going to put the picture actually of that moment as the headline for this podcast. But I was laying on this swing over the lagoon, and Mark took this photo of me. And in that moment, you took that picture. I remember I was laying over the swing with my arms open, like my heart wide open. And I was saying like, God, I'm ready to receive. Like, what is the next step? What is the next program you want me to deliver to the people, whatever. And what I found was I was catching myself like trying to analyze what I was getting, right? I was like, okay, what is it? Is it this? Is it that? Is it like, and what was funny is like I got this visual of like being blindfolded, and like I was receiving this gift in the moment, just laying there with my heart open in the sun. The gift was already being given. And I just needed to say thank you for a minute without trying to figure out what it was, without unwrapping it, like, right, without analyzing it or trying to make sense of it, but just literally like without knowing or having the clarity of like, yep, this is exactly what it is, and this is how you're going to use that, and this is the framework. It was literally like I was being absorbed in my body. And then the trusting was that as I move forward, as we go home, as whatever, you know, the wrapping is going to come off this thing. Like I already have the gift. The wrapping and the clarity of how to use it and what it looks like, right? What this program gets to look like, who's going to come in. It's going to come out layer by layer. But the gift was already there. And so I wanted to bring that up. Yeah.
And I think, you know, when we do receive something, maybe it's a new idea, a business idea, something that you want to do for someone, with someone, something that you're doing for work, often, in fact, I would say most often, probably 99% of the time, we have this thing and then we think, okay, what do I have to do in order for this to work?
Yeah.
Now, there's some value in being strategic
sure.
and putting structure and making a plan and a to-do list and all that stuff. I'm not saying that that's not necessary. Like, we still get to take, you know, action on whatever ideas have come our way or whatever projects we're working on. And what if we just pause and say, okay, what do you want me to do with this?
Tune in.
You know, like what gets to happen? What gets to happen next? You know, show me, you know, the way. And yeah, that's really something that's going to shift for me after this journey down here, is to really move into true co-creation of, we've always been co-creating, right? Maybe we just were blind to it, but to really move into true co-creation, trusting that the people that we need for the project or the outcomes will show up, you know, trusting, let's, you know, take, for example, if you're looking for maybe an employee for your business, for your team, there's a certain amount of, you put the posting out there or you tell people about it, like that gets to happen, right? And, right, just say, like, I'm open to receiving the perfect person to step into this role.
Yeah.
Right.
Let them come to you too.
Right, and just put it out there to God, put it out there to the universe, and just let it flow, and then just be open, to talking to people and having the conversation and whatever, posting about it or whatever it gets to look like. And that's a way, you know, a very simple way that you can co-create. You say something really great all the time. I'm ready to receive the perfect person for this program, or I'm ready to receive my next client. And, you know, lo and behold, whenever that happens,
I do
every single time, right?
It does, but it's not just saying it, right? Because I do say that a lot, and the key there is really like, okay, I'm ready to receive the gift, I'm ready to receive the adventure, I'm ready to receive whatever. But it's not just my head saying it. Like what that is a decision that, okay, I'm open. Now, I'd love it to look like this, but like I'm also open to it coming in whatever way. And the other piece is really checking my heart to go, do I have any resistance? around this. So for example, there's been times where I'm like, oh, I'm ready to receive my clients, but if I really checked my body, there was a little tension that was like squeezing, that was like, oh shoot, that's going to require me to do way more work, or it's going to take my energy away. And so what I didn't realize is I was actually asking for one thing and saying, but I was sending a mixed message that was like, I'm ready, but kind of not really, because I'm afraid that if I get this gift, then I'll lose something else, right? So I just wanted to say, as we're talking about really enjoying, again, I'm going to use something practical. Like, we're here. I ran a retreat for an amazing group of women last week. We had a beautiful chef. Like, we were on the beach. We did 2.5 days of playing and deep work. And there was so many healing and so many tears and so much connection. I'm going to do another episode on that. And then right from there, I came here to be with you. And now we have a few days together, and we got to do some work together on the next level of growth for us. Now we have a couple days to play, and then we're going into another event. But we're here, and it's like, whoa, there's like so much relaxation, and there's so much beauty, and there's so much receiving. And like, there can also be like some resistance around like, well, don't relax too much. You got some work to do. You got to, and it's funny that the deeper we relax and the more we just kind of go with it, then the inspiration, instead of like, oh gosh, I got to get some work done, or oh, I have to do this, and then I can go play. It's funny that there's an organic way to begin to like co-create. That's like, we're relaxing, we were just laying by the ocean, and then we're like, hey, want to go back to the room and record this podcast? It's like, yeah. And it was interesting. It started raining and thundering a bit at the time, so it was like perfect timing. We come back in, we're recording this podcast, and then we move into the next piece of the dance. And it's more of that organic dance. And I'm not saying like don't time block or things like that, but there's a way to actually move into this space where you can be in the work, and you can be in the play, and you can be in the receiving, and you can also be in the giving, without trying to make it so rigid, right, that you're actually like more in the forcing mode, right?
And what if the relaxation is the work?
Exactly. Like, we talked about this, right?
I was just posting this on my Instagram and Facebook story, like posting the pictures of where we are, where we've been. And I just wrote, I said, I know this doesn't look like work.
But it is.
But I'm working.
There's so much happening behind
I know that
the
I'm working because it's working.
Yeah.
And there are new opportunities flowing in, and, and people reaching out, and, things that are happening because we do already have systems put in place, for people to flow in. People are booking appointments, and I mean, it's like, it is working. Yeah.
And as you go in and you are sharing the life, the journey, not from a place of, oh, look at me, because I need to sell you something, or, oh, look at this, so that, right? Like, we're not trying to control anything. We're literally sharing from a genuine place. Like, people naturally want to gravitate towards that. They want to learn more. They're curious. It's like, and I always say this, like, judge me or join me. There's going to be some people that are like, oh, must be nice. Aren't you getting any work done? Like, your life is always your life is like a permanent vacation. And it's like, yes, and like, I'm always working too, like, because the play is the work. And so there's that camp, which is, again, where that level of consciousness is. And those people are at very much rooted in lack. That's like, well, I can't afford that. I can't afford time off, because if I'm relaxing, then I'm losing. Right? I'm losing money. I'm losing work time. I'm losing efficiency, or whatever. That's a different level of consciousness versus the consciousness of possibility and curiosity that says, whoa, if that's possible for you, then that's possible to me. So what does it look like when I also get to relax more and get more done, right? Allow more to happen through me. And so I would just invite those of you who are listening, like, where do you find yourself maybe getting a little envious or jealous, or looking at things and going like, oh, must be nice, right? I can't because, well, I would invite you to consider, like, is there a spirit of lack there? And what if you move again into that place of, whoa, well, if, if that's inspiring, what about that is also inspiring for you? And is it possible that you could move into, not necessarily replicating their life or that thing, but what is it about that essence that you're attracted to?
There's something to be said about that. In my work back home, we're always teaching the story framework, which is basically the cognitive behavioral model. And we encourage people to look at what are your triggers, both positive and maybe not so positive. The things that make you angry, or the things that make you sad or disappointed or feeling behind, as well as the things that make you feel abundant and happy and cared for and loved and all that. And you can kind of split those into those two categories, obviously, but the how we look at that and how we evaluate it is the same. If there's something that's good, great, then what is the action that I get to take to allow more of that in my life? So if the money is flowing, what are those actions that I get to experience that allow even more of that? And then you might notice at some point, like, that will plateau.
Or if the love is flowing, right? What are the
Yeah,
actions that support that?
Exactly. And then if that ever plateaus and kind of feels like maybe it gets a little bit stuck, then that's when I know, like, oh, it's time for maybe a little bit of an upgrade. Now I get to relax. I need to relax. I get to go in, right? Or I get to, and start to listen. Okay, so what's coming up for me that maybe now has stopped the flow, or maybe it hasn't stopped, and it's just like, heck, like, how much better could it be? What if it could be even more? And just asking that question.
Yeah.
And then let the answers come through.
Yeah.
And now you'll get the direction on where to go next. Right? And then on, maybe on the not so positive side of your little T graph, when you're looking at your triggers, is, okay, so this person is doing something and it's upsetting me.
Yeah.
Okay, what I teach people is that your story is your story.
It's your reality. It's the lens that you're seeing the world through.
And their story is their story. And I'll tell, when I'm working with an audience, maybe there's 30, 40, 50, 100 people in the room. And I say, so, we all just met. There are 30 new stories about me.
Yeah,
right?
That is so true.
And not a single one of those stories has anything to do with me.
Exactly.
Right? There are 30 stories, and every single story in the room is your story. Right? And so if there's something about, me, or just anything in general that triggers you, the question becomes, okay, so what is this bringing up for me? Right? And if you're constantly in just like the grind, you almost don't have the capacity or even the time to just let the true answers come through. And so when we don't have the ability to stop and relax, what we do is we make it about them and how they need to change and how they need to shift and what they need to do differently. And we're all human, so you will always be disappointed at some point, right? If you're reliant upon,
if you're expecting the external environment to settle so that you can be whatever you need to be, safe, relaxed, happy.
So the question's got to become, okay, so what does this bring up for me? How can I heal whatever anger is coming up, or whatever sadness is coming up, or whatever, maybe less positive emotion? How do I heal this in me? Right?
So that I don't keep creating from this.
So place. And then once you allow that healing to come through, you're going to find almost seemingly magically, right? That trigger stops showing up in that person.
Yeah, because you're shifting also the level of consciousness that you're showing up in. So, I love that.
And something that I learned in this last few days is not only am I healing that in myself so that I will actually stop seeing it more, I'm actually healing for that person too.
Yeah.
And that's how we be in co-creation together.
It's true. This morning as we were on the beach, I was working with a client through some virtual messaging and stuff like that. And, I work with a lot of people who are gone through divorces or going through divorces or struggling in their relationships. And it's, relationships like just our intimate ones especially are the ones with a kid. I mean, and they're just like sometimes like a knife, they know how to get us right in that thing, that one word, that one look, that one comment. And it's, again, that story that we perceive, and it's like, ooh, right away we're ready to fight. And, as I was working with this person this morning, and it was so interesting, when you're not entangled in the story, when you're not entrenched in it, and you can see it from the outside, you can literally, it's so clear, right? That bitterness or the hatred or the fear that's inside, what I'll often hear is like, he's being this, she's doing that, they're making me angry, they know how to poke my buttons, and if they want to fight, they're going to get a fight. And it's like, what's interesting is like, no, honey, you just love to fight. So you're actually looking for a fight. So you're looking at your partner, you're looking at this situation, taking everything personally as an attack, right? And it's so interesting because as I've done a lot of work through moving and healing the warrior within, the wounded parts of my warrior that love to fight and always looked, again, challenges are great, but like we can also get addicted to always having to have a fight. And it's so easy if that's our default system. And so as this person was coming and saying, well, you know, she just wants to pick a fight. She wants, I'll get a fight. And I was just watching his energy and his spirit get totally pulled into this story, this narrative that isn't actually, you know, even existing unless he wants to create it. Mm-hmm. And so the bitterness, the hatred, and one thing I sent, which I think, you know, it's like, hey, you know, fear always feels threatened or attacks, right? Fear sees everything as a threat. So when we're looking at things in our environment, we're like, well, they said this or they said that. You know, the question is really like, what's coming up for you? Like, what are you worried about, right? And I encourage you too, if you're feeling attacked or something from your partner is coming as an attack, to say like, what's worrying you right now? Because what's interesting is you're actually worried. You're afraid. And as you honor that and you soften and you start to get curious about the fear in the room instead of the attack, fear can come out of hiding. Mm-hmm. And now the transformation is done through compassion. That's saying, I'm curious to understand what's scary for you right now. When then allows us to say what's scary, and it's amazing that we can heal it, right? And we've talked a lot about this, but the blaming always comes from that victim identity too. So anyways, it's interesting as we begin to like open ourselves up to be curious. It's like, okay, this is my story. Who is the creator of this story? Is it the fear inside? Is it the bitterness inside? Is it and it all comes from past programming, but man, that whatever fuel feeds your story, be conscious of that, because there's a lot of life-sucking stories that are fueled by bitterness and fear, and
be conscious of where those things are coming up.
Yeah.
If there's some bitterness or fear or anger or you know, whatever, be conscious of that. So there's something that I'm now calling, after this weekend, the law of focus.
Yeah, I like it. Law of focus.
The law of
Let's
focus,
hear about
right?
it.
So if something is a law, right? Like take like the law of gravity.
Governance.
I'm not talking about man-made laws.
Right.
Okay, those can be changed.
Universal law.
But universal laws that God has created, like the law of gravity. Like, you don't have to worry about gravity showing up. As far as I know, that if I walk off the edge of this treehouse, like, I'm going down. Right?
I do not have wings in this physical vessel.
We figured out a lot in this Untamed Life, but I don't think that we figured out how to defy gravity, right? Other than, you know, jumping in an airplane, which eventually is going to come down too, right? So, but that's what a law is. A law is irrefutable. A law is something that always shows up. It's dependable. And so the thing that was coming through for me this weekend was the law of focus. And so whenever I give my focus to something or put my attention on something, I will always get more of it.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm focused on lack, if I'm focused on the things that are not going well, then I will find ways to allow more of that in my life. That's how it works. If I put my focus on things that I enjoy, things that are good, then guess what?
Yeah.
I will get more of those things.
It's like ingredients, like you're pouring ingredients into a recipe, and whatever you're baking, it's what your ingredients.
We had a guy at an event months ago who was just really triggered, really agitated with his mornings, right? Because young father, like 3 kids, 5 and under. Right.
That's tough.
And that's a season of life that many of us have gone through. You know, if you've had kids, you know that there's a lot to do.
It's energetically demanding.
It is. You know, it requires a lot of your focus, and then you put a lot of focus on a lot of different things, and focus becomes fragmented, so then you become fragmented, and so on and so forth. He was no exception. He was really triggered. He hated his mornings, having to get the kids up, get them out of the door, drop them off at daycare, you know, and by the time he can start anything at work, it's 8:30, and he's already tired.
And he's already resentful.
And so in the coaching, all I asked him to do was a simple activity. I said, you're not going to change anything about your morning routine because you got to get the kids to daycare, you got to get them to school, you got to feed them, you know, you got to do all the things. Like, that's part of the job. That's what you sign up for when you become a parent. And before you, when you're done dropping off the last kid, before you leave, sit in the parking lot, open the notes on your phone, or take a journal with you. I want you to write down 3 things about your kids, about something that happened, anything. And if somebody giggled, or somebody farted, or just something, right? Just anything, right? Anything that you can, you know, acknowledge that was, you know, funny or good, or something positive that you can focus on. And he wrote me a text message after 2 weeks, and he's like, this has completely changed my morning. I absolutely love taking these kids to school.
Right? And what changed, really?
And all he did
recognition,
was shift his focus on some gratitude, focus it on, you know, having grace in the moment when things aren't going perfect, and, you know, it completely shifted for him. So I was super proud of him for doing the work, and it's such a great example of what happens when we just simply, literally, just so simple, open the iNotes on your phone and create a little gratitude journal, and you can just focus on that one little thing or 2 little things that happened that can be positive, and it just shifts your whole day.
It really does. I love it because it's so simple. You guys, it's so simple. These things are so subtle. They're so simple, and yet they completely change the tide and open floodgates up for us, free us. And I think this is why, like, the mind loves complexity. I say that all the time, but, like, the mind loves to complicate things sometimes, and we're in a world where people love to connect through misery. Complaining seems to be a main way that people connect. So it's like they get together and start complaining about their day or their kids or their husband or their wife. And it's like, pay attention, because these subtle things, wow, they just make such a difference. And it just reminds me too, like, that's one of the first things I did when we went to the retreat last weekend. I noticed, right, when the women came in and everybody was just sort of checking into the house and stuff, that people were coming out of airports. They were coming from these environments with their kids. Some of them maybe were rushing, whatever. And it was interesting as I sort of sat back. I welcomed them, but sat back to observe what their energy was like coming into the house and how they were starting to connect each other. There was a mixed bag, right? Some of them were like, oh, I'm so happy. But it was amazing how many would right away going into, like, complaining about something that happened along the way. Oh, you won't believe this happened. And then it's like bait, right? Someone else, because we connect through story, then someone else wants to connect to that story and now piles in. And then and I started to listen a little bit about, you know, maybe complaining about a husband, and then, oh yes, this happened to me. And so one of the first things I did with them that night at our welcome, you know, I call it like a little initiate welcome, you know, session. We sit around, is really setting the tone for the event. That's like, so now we're going to shift the state, we're going to shift the atmosphere in this house, and we're going to be really intentional about when we connect with each other. It's going to be to share a story of goodness, to share a story of, like, what we're appreciating, or to be curious and asking each other questions that open us up. And I made a law, basically, that this is like, there's a zero tolerance for complaining in this house. So we don't connect through complaints. We connect through building each other up. We connect through curiosity. We connect through sharing stories that are life-giving. And, you know, paying attention to the temptation to maybe complain, because it was a week of feminine embodiment, right? And we worked a lot on relationships, and the temptation is there to be like, well, he does this, or he doesn't do this for me, and instead getting curious about what was coming up for us, and, like, again, shifting the focus to within, to what he is doing right. And it's amazing, like, once we set that as the norm, the whole state changed for the house, and the connection was so much more powerful with the women. It wasn't heavy, it wasn't contracting, because we've all had those conversations too, where you go and you're like, I'm going out for dinner or with friends or at a business thing, and you leave and you're kind of feeling heavy, and you're like, what the heck just happened? And I'm curious, how much of the time, how are we connecting, right? And so, again, it's very intentional. One of the things that we worked on as we kind of start to wrap here is, we're here now creating more harmony. We're, like, asking ourselves, what does it look like we talk a lot about co-creation and, like, working together. We love to work together. We're going to create an event together in a couple weeks here for some men. But really, like, we moved into our house, we're blended the kids, and learning how to work together in our physical home, or your office and my office. And we've talked a lot about creating harmony, more music in our relationship, how we work together and what we're creating with the kids. You guys know about Project Gravitas. Where do you see your focus going as we head home? And like being in this, and even now we're already doing it, but like in this creation of this harmonious environment. Like, I'm so curious. Now I'm asking him a question for our relationship, so we're role modeling.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I...
So, nope, you didn't stop the recording. We're good. It's like, don't panic. That's part of the answer.
Yeah.
Is don't panic. Like, breathe more. Like, really being intentional about how to start the day.
Yeah.
Easing, doing my best to ease into the day, staying as grounded, as possible. It's not like there are not going to be challenging things that are going to come up, or life will get busy and there's going to be some running that gets to get done, or whatever, right? But it's like, how do you want to experience it? And so, for me, tactically speaking, I mean, breath work,
real life stuff.
Breath work is going to be a big part of it for me. More prayer, really being able to hold those structure for our house.
Ooh, yes, please. I love that. I receive that. What does that mean?
So, one of before we even came down here this week, right? We're like, what if we just focus on continuously raising the vibe, right?
Inside the house.
Continuously raising the vibe in our house, and trusting God with that vibe to guide and direct the kids and the things, and bring the people our way. So really, I mean, creating that structure so we get to up level some of the the cleaning practices, and like teach the kids more about that. And so there's some teaching and some checklists that are going to go into place about how to keep your room. There's going to be some conversations that get had about what gets to get brought in the house and what doesn't get to get brought in the house. And so that's going to be a big piece of creating even greater structure, not like rigid structure, right? I mean,
it's a support system.
But yeah, a support system so that everybody can have more than enough, and everybody can get everything that they need and feel supported and feel loved. And that's something I'm actually really looking forward to implementing that, because that allows us to move past maybe some things that weren't going as well before, and allows us to up level. And I'm going to fix the sound system so that we can have beautiful
music pumping through the house,
and sounds and things like
high vibe music
moving through the house all the time, and just raising the vibration of the house. With sound. Over the weekend, like, I healed my voice.
We were singing together.
We were singing, and I've always had this story that I don't have a good voice. I don't sing well. Like, I've never enjoyed it, even in like music classes when I was in elementary school as a kid. It was just like I never enjoyed singing. I've never done it, and over the weekend, like,
I also
almost
think
like a
that
miracle like that just shifted for me, and like I haven't stopped.
But I also believe that part of that is not just you working on your voice, but it's you actually allowing yourself to enjoy being where you are. Because the contraction of like opening up or not opening up is like also like, whoo, can I just totally let go and open that right up to be fully expressed instead of forcing forward. And
to be fully transparent, I mean, I had been battling, not being okay, or not feeling, and like I deserve, the space or the business or the customer. And there's been like a lot of that like self-doubt and negative self-talk, and I was battling some demons that way. And so, like, that's why this is the work. So you create this space and come down here, and you don't have to come down here to do this, but I mean, for me, this is part of my practice. And so I came down here and then spent some time, or invested some time getting clear on like, well, why do I feel lack, or why do I feel behind, or why do I feel like some of these things I don't want to feel anymore, and I got answers on that. So my encouragement for everybody is to take some
space,
make some space for yourself to allow the work to come through on what gets to relax more.
And whatever that looks like, right? But I want to go back real quick to that. Yes, I really appreciate you bringing that up. It's whatever that looks like. Some people say, well, I can't get away for a week here to go to Mexico, right? Well, where can you begin to create space, right? The space is available. You're just filling it. So where can you redirect some of that space, right? And just trust me when I say this, that when you invest your time, your space, you actually multiply your time, your space. I was talking with my coach this morning, and it's like, if we want to experience it all, we must be willing to invest it all. So if we want to experience a wealth of time, we must be willing to invest time in time freedom. If we want to whatever it is, right? If we want to experience a wealth of love, we must be willing to invest all of our heart in cultivating love. Not, instead of like investing frugally. It's like ridiculous. We're like, okay, I'll give you like 5 minutes, God, to pray while I'm in the shower and thinking about the thing, and then I'm going to shift into warrior mode and go get things done, instead of like, well, if I really want to co-create with God, like, am I investing the time to pray and receive the guidance step by step and infuse it into my day? But going back, I want to make sure that we circled back to the tactical stuff in our house. Like, I love to give people those practical things. Like, the one thing that we've gotten really clear on is like that our home, everyone that comes in there, our cleaning lady, like everybody that gets to work for us on our team, everybody that gets to come into our house, our space, the music we play in our house, the objects, the little trinkets and music and posters that the kids get to put on the wall. Like, we love to say like, oh, that's your space, do what you want. But like, really, it's our job, it's our responsibility to hold the state, the atmosphere for our home, and to protect the territory of our home. Because you don't realize, very heavy, low vibrational music creates density, brings in depression, depressive spirits, like putting certain visuals or objects in your house, or like having people come into your house even to clean or whatever, that are bitter themselves or angry. Like, we can do that and like continue to pour love, but we got to be very conscious of what we allow into our space. And so those are some tactical things. We talked about creating more order, not like clean up your shit, but like, so we get to learn how to respect ourselves, we get to learn how to respect our space, the private space and the collective space, on a whole other level. We get to co-create and collaborate together at meals, and that means everyone has something to contribute, not just like mom or dad cooking everything. And not that our kids have been pretty good about that, but like, really, I've had this conversation with some clients too that have just done everything all the time for their kids. It's like, when we do that, we're actually telling them they don't have much value to bring, because it's like, don't worry, I got it all, I have all the value, you have none, you just go sit there. Instead of like, no, you have something to offer, know?
I heard, I think it was on a TikTok or something this morning that I was looking at, where a gentleman said, here's my piece of advice for you. He said, you can raise your kids and spoil your grandkids, or you can spoil your kids and end up raising your grandkids.
Woo! That is good. Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Amen to that.
And I'm guessing, we love our kids, but at some point you're going to be, they get to become adults, and we want to go live our life and go do some other things for a while too, right? So,
exactly. Equip them. Equip them.
Again, I guess, tactically speaking, you probably have some people in your life that are, impeding on the ability for you to be able to experience more, live in a higher vibe, reduce stress, whatever the case may be. And, you can love them from a distance sometimes, and that's okay.
And that is okay.
Like, the way vibration works is there are people that are attracted to your vibe, and there are people that are not. And if there are people that are coming in and, detracting
into your environment,
into your environment, like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to spend a great big bunch of time with them, and when you do, right? Because, you know, sometimes you're going to be around family members or whatever that maybe you're like, hey, you know, like,
I feel
you
heavy when they come
you
into my atmosphere.
you can love them, you don't have to like them, and that's
Yeah.
okay, right?
Yeah.
And you spend your time, but then when you leave, like, you clean your space, you clean your energy, like, take a deep breath,
Release
like,
it.
let it go, release it, and then, you know, and then move on. So,
Don't
you
keep
know,
them
I
in
think
your atmosphere.
we often feel like we have these obligations to other people, for whatever reason, and and you really don't. I mean, even if you work with them, handle your work, do your business, and then move on.
Keep them in their own container, you know, and we talked about that a lot at the women's retreat, and I experienced it this morning as I was working with some of my clients going through some like really rough patches and wanting to, you know, there was a lot of heavy, you know, energy and density, and it's like I can be here in this beautiful space and enjoy it and keep pouring love. I can keep pouring love into their situation, and I can keep, you know, asking questions to help them redirect, but I don't have to go in there with them. And so, you know, even with that family situation, you know, when we say you can love from a distance and you can also hold space from a distance, like when you're conscious like of like maybe it's physically hanging out with them, maybe you need to physically not hang out that often, but also how often are you hanging out with them emotionally, spiritually, and energetically? What I mean by that is they're over there doing their business, you're in the middle of your day, and you are fixating on what they're doing, what they think, what they believe. What you're doing there is you're literally inviting them into your atmosphere again, and you're letting their tone set your tone. And this is when I talk about opening portals and stuff. It's like being conscious of like this space that people get to occupy in your physical life, in your mental life, your emotional life, your spiritual life. And like and this is not like hard boundary, screw you, you're out there, I'm out here, which is an unloving way to set boundaries. And it's a very much like you're out there on your own in the cold, good luck, don't mess my vibe, you know, which I think is also very toxic. It's a way to say, you know what, I love you, I can hold space for you, I'm going to allow you to have your experience, and I'm going to keep pouring love into that space at the level that I have the capacity to do so, not to the point that I'm doing so from a place of depletion. And I'm also going to be okay with you being there and me being here, which I think is like acceptance. You know, if we have, you know, I talk a lot about my dad, like, you know, and still struggling with alcohol and struggling with some of his addictions, and I get to be okay with that he's there, I'm here, I can still love him. I don't have to take it on or make it about me. And when I interact with him, I get to just be aware of how much interaction and conversation I can be in before, you know, that starts to infiltrate my space. And then I get to pull myself back, and it's a little bit of a dance, right? And so just really being conscious of the space, physical space, but also the atmosphere, which I'm so excited heading home, like the atmosphere of our home, what that's going to get to be. And by the way, this is the work, like literally us being here and having the time and having this space. And we danced yesterday, you know, we danced a lot over the last 2 days, but I always tell couples, dance together, because how you dance together also shows you a lot about how harmonious you're moving together. And it was cool yesterday when we just got to like be in this big hug and embrace, and I had my head on your heart, and you were moving, and I was letting his heart kind of guide me, and our hearts were together. And it was just a different type of dance, you know, when you're heart to heart, really close versus trying to navigate each other.
Really be in the, you know, the joy of the moment. Just allow the joy, the connection. Like, it's like, put your sword down for a minute.
Yeah, and just dance a little.
Take the armor off for a second, and like, if you're gonna block time for something, block time for that first.
Yeah.
You know, before we go get all up in our heads about what's got to get done for the day. You know, like, we've been doing this for a long time, but it's like that 20-second hug first thing in the morning. Like, if your partner is not open to this right now, like, just grab them.
Yeah.
The first time you see them in the morning,
invite them into the hug.
just fucking grab them.
Yep.
And hold on to them, right? And notice, right? Because what happens when we hug, when we touch, is that our body releases oxytocin. And this is what allows us to feel the feeling of connection. And so when you do that, you will literally transform their body chemistry. And I just want to slows them down just enough to maybe, you know, be a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more intentional, a little bit more, yes, to enjoy, but also to enjoy. Enjoy the feeling of it.
Yeah. And also, just FYI, when you are doing that and you're going to give a hug, don't say, "Come give me a hug," because now you're going to get to take, right? And it's like, "Oh, I gotta give you a hug." Instead, I invite you to say, like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a hug right now. I want to give you a hug. I'm here to pour this into you. Let me hold you for a minute," right? And it's so funny. Again, another very subtle shift, but when someone's actually, you let them be in the receiving of that, and then you end up receiving as well. So that's, by the way, that also works for other physical touch arenas. Instead of like, gimme, 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 it's like, may I give you, right? May I serve you? May I pour into you? And then it's just, again, the law of how receptivity works. So on that note, I think we're going to go receive some more sunshine. The rain has lifted. We are going to go receive some lunch, some nourishment, and enjoy the rest of the day. But thanks for being here, babe. I'm excited.
Thanks for letting me join.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this and to be able to have these conversations together.
I really appreciate getting to create with you. I like it.
It's fun.
It is.
All right. Well, those of you listening, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you are receiving some of this high vibe from the treehouse and the love that we're sharing and the harmony that we're experiencing. And we're just going to pour it through this podcast into you. Be grateful for all things. Be thankful for all things. And as you just receive, you are also inspired to give. And so I just thank you again for being here. For those of you who want to, really explore more about this work, I'll be hosting a 5-day course, Prepare to Receive. The reason we're sitting here having this conversation today on this podcast today in a treehouse in Mexico is because I went through the process of preparing my heart, my mind to receive this relationship and this level of conscious living, really, that we're in today. So if you are at a place where you are really ready to receive, the partner of your dreams, the relationship that your heart has been longing for and truly is designed for, then I invite you to check out that link in the show notes. And we'll be starting that in September. Until next time, here's to loving fiercely and leading courageously. And talk to you soon. Many blessings.